You think it's cold here. They just announced a record in Antarctica. You know how cold it was? It was minus 135 degrees.
Whoa.
130. It's the coldest they've ever recorded. And forget that global warming stuff. I mean, they've had a couple of records down there.
When was that? 2010?
10, yeah.
Wow,
I mean,
unbelievable.
But it's still kind of chilly. You go up to Minnesota, it gets to be minus 20, 30.
I'm a Wisconsin girl. We're used to that. A little wind chill factor added to that.
I was in Duluth. I think it was minus 20, as I recall.
Duluth is cold.
It really is cold.
Yes, yeah. I hope you're having coffee in Duluth this morning.
So it's snowing in Washington, snowing on the East Coast, but it's not snowing in Virginia Beach. It doesn't snow here. It's the garden spot of the world. Terry?
Well, it's not going to be minus 135 from the mid-Atlantic to New England today, but the region is getting hit by yet another winter storm with snow, rain, ice, and as Caitlin Burke reports, it's proving to be a nightmare for travelers.
50 million Americans all along the Northeast corridor are waking up to winter weather advisories and storm warnings.
I'm pretty concerned. I'm driving all the way from Frederick, so I guess I had to leave a couple hours early.
Snow's forecast today from Washington to Boston. Some areas could see as much as 5 inches. And for travelers, that's more bad news.
On Monday, 1,700 flights were canceled, including more than 100 at Chicago O'Hare, one of the busiest airports in the nation. Dallas has been a mess since last week. Some travelers stranded for days.
We were in New York City for a nice weekend and didn't get out and were put on standby and standby and standby.
We do have a lot of road equipment, and we're continuing to work on it.
And driving isn't going any smoother than flying. Outside New York City, at least 36 people were injured in this massive 24-car pileup. And it appears from this home video that parked cars aren't safe either.
Holy freaking moly.
Ice from freezing rain brought down power lines Monday night, leaving well over 120,000 homes and businesses in Virginia, West Virginia, and Maryland in the dark.
Tree fell at the end of the street and blocked the entire street, took down one power pole, which then took down another, which took down the third.
Forecasters say this winter has already had an unusual amount of snow. As of Monday, it's covering almost 67% of the U.S. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
But it's really caused by global warming, folks. It's the emissions of carbon that are causing all of this cold. If it's too cold, it's global warming. It's too hot, it's global warming. If it's too much rain, it's global warming. If it's too dry, it's global warming. Sooner or later, they're going to start blaming it on the sun. Well, leaders from around the world come to remember a historic figure in South Africa. John Jessup has that story from Washington. Here's John.
Pat, tens of thousands paid tribute to Nelson Mandela at a memorial service in South Africa today. Mandela was remembered as a symbol of reconciliation and a man with a mighty power of forgiveness. Mourners streamed into the 95,000-seat World Cup soccer stadium near Johannesburg early Tuesday. A joyful crowd sang and danced to Mandela's name. More than 90 countries flew in representatives from Argentina to Pakistan, Trinidad to China. The President and First Lady Michelle Obama arrived early this morning. Former President George W. Bush, his wife Laura, and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton joined the President on the 16-hour flight from Washington. Former Presidents Bill Clinton and Jimmy Carter separately also made the trek to attend. President Obama was one of several invited to eulogize the anti-apartheid icon.
Mandela taught us the power of action, but he also taught us the power of ideas. The importance of reason and arguments. The need to study not only those who you agree with, but also those who you don't agree with.
After today's memorial, Mandela's body will lie in state for 3 days before burial on Sunday. Well, back here at home, not only will many people not be able to keep their doctor under Obamacare, they may not be able to keep their current prescriptions either. That's according to Forbes magazine public health and regulation analyst Scott Gottlieb. He writes that the problem stemmed from the structure of Obamacare itself and how the different plan works. He points out many drugs may not be covered at all. You can find his analysis by going to our website at cbnnews.com. Pat?
That's what happens when you let a Yale or a Harvard academic draw up your health care. Ezekiel Emanuel, to my knowledge, had no medical training, and if he did have it, he sure didn't show much of it in this bill. But he tries to defend it. It's indefensible. It is an absolute monstrosity. And we've got to fight, folks, against the encroachments of the socialist mentality that want to control everything. That's the way they are. They want to control everything, and if you don't agree with them, they'll put you in prison. I mean, that's the way it works. We can't have that in America. This is the land of the free, the home of the brave. We've got to remember where our roots are, and our roots do not lie in Barack Obama. He has a different philosophy from the average American. John?
Pat, in late November, the U.S. and other world powers signed an agreement with Iran, and just minutes later, they disagreed on what it said. As Chris Mitchell reports, some Israeli experts are warning those differences could leave the door open for Iran to build nuclear weapons.
After Geneva, Israel's former ambassador to the UN, Dori Gold, examined what the U.S. said about the agreement and what the Iranians said. He briefed diplomats and journalists at the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs.
So my team started translating statements made by President Hassan Rouhani, who said, dismantling our nuclear facilities, that's a red line. So there's a huge gap that's coming down the road.
Gold said the gap includes a major difference on sanctions. After the signing, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry said the architecture of the sanctions remains in place.
What does Rouhani, the president of Iran, say in Farsi, in Persian language? He says the exact opposite. He says, no, we're going to fracture the architecture of sanctions, using the American term.
Americans and Capitol Hill share Gold's skepticism about the agreement. 62% say Iranian leaders aren't serious about addressing international concerns about their nuclear program. On Capitol Hill, there's bipartisan support for a bill authorizing more sanctions. The White House and Iran object to that legislation, and Iran's foreign minister tells Time magazine that if Congress approves any new sanctions, the Geneva deal is dead. Gold believes the West needs to know what Iran is doing.
Those of us who sit in the Middle East and see what Iran is doing on the ground, but what few people know is that the bloodbath in Syria is being both directed and manned by Iranian soldiers coming from the Quds Force, the overseas units of the Revolutionary Guards. Now, if you want to get a stable relationship between Iran and the West, Iran's got to cut out this behavior.
Gold warned Iran is going the way of another rogue regime.
I'm convinced that they will do what North Korea did, which was to evict the inspectors, to say the world is weak and we can do whatever we want. I know this is politically incorrect, but if you want a safe and secure world, you don't give the most dangerous weapons to the most dangerous regimes.
Given the different interpretations after the Geneva Accord, many experts here believe Iran feels it has a green light to pursue its nuclear program. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Pat, how long do you think it'll be before this deal may fall apart?
Well, as far as the Iranians go, it never existed. So as far as the Americans go, we will want a fig leaf. Obama doesn't want to admit a failure, so will it fall apart? Well, it'll of its own weight. But you think back to the days of Munich, when a guy with an umbrella, as Churchill called him, that silly old man with his umbrella, not Churchill, but Hitler called him that, Adolf Hitler. Neville Chamberlain, he went over there and Hitler just absolutely bamboozled him. But the Allies, France and England, had more power than the Nazis. And they had treaties that they could have enforced from Versailles that would have kept the Germans from arming Alsace-Lorraine and that area in the middle, which they had been agreed under treaty not to do. But did the Allies enforce? No, they didn't. And then when Churchill got to Munich, he gave up Czechoslovakia. Czechoslovakia at the time had one of the most robust armies in Europe. And Hitler said, well, the Sudetendeutsch, we've got to set them free. And Chamberlain says, okay, Mr. Chancellor, if that's the way it is, as long as we can get peace. Comes back, waves his umbrella in the air. I was just a youngster then, but I remember it. I mean, it was just imprinted in your mind, holding up that umbrella and say, we've got peace in our time. What a joke. If the Allies had put it to Hitler then, they could have spared 50 million lives that were lost during World War II. But they didn't do it. And the United States is following the way of Munich, and our Secretary of State and our President look very much like Chamberlain. They look weak, and it's a question of whether or not people in the Senate, for example, can do something to change it. And I know that one of the senators is an ardent supporter of Israel, and so John can tell us more about that.
Pat, Senate Democrats are using the new power they granted themselves to put more President Obama's picks for judges on America's top appeals court. 2 weeks ago, Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid used the so-called nuclear option to wipe out the long-standing Senate rule on filibusters. That rule let the minority party hold up nominations. Senate leaders are taking steps to give Democrats a 3-seat majority on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia, often called the second most powerful court in the country. It's the court most likely to hear challenges against any executive actions taken by President Obama. Well, Oklahoma leaders say Satanists will not be allowed to erect a monument at the state capitol. A spokesman for the New York-based Satanic Temple wanted to donate a statue and put it next to a monument of the Ten Commandments. But legislators say that plan is far from reality, and members of the committee that would need to approve that monument sounded skeptical. Senate President Pro Tem Brian Bingman says such a display at the Capitol would be inappropriate. Exercise is the best lifestyle choice you can make to cut the risk of dementia as you get older. Researchers at Cardiff University in the UK studied key habits in more than 2,200 men since 1979. They found the best habits to avoid disease include exercise, a healthy diet, low body weight, not smoking, and a low intake of alcohol. But they found that exercise is the best way to keep your mind healthy as you age. And Pat, the study's lead investigator, says exercise and healthy behavior is more beneficial than any preventive procedure or medical treatment you could ever get.
They're absolutely right. Berries, nuts, oat bran.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do?
Well, I like that too.
You
I don't do it every morning, but you
Yeah.
do. I know you're faithful to that.
Do you? Well, I just don't like to eat anything else.
Right.
Did you exercise?
Yes, I do.
Good
I
for
walk
you.
on a regular basis.
Do you?
Yeah.
Well, it's been raining and I can't ride my horse. I
Yeah,
let him exercise, and I get the
For you.
I get the benefits of it. It's good for his cardio, and I'm right there on him. Okay.
Well, it's legal to say Merry Christmas in public schools in Texas, and the state's making sure that everyone remembers that. The state legislature gained national attention when it passed that measure this past summer. The bipartisan law also protects symbols like Christmas trees, menorahs, and nativity scenes, as long as more than one religion is represented and a secular symbol like a snowman is on display. The Republican who sponsored the law says it's intended to keep censorship of Christmas out of public schools. Conservatives are hoping similar measures will gain momentum across America. The makers of the hit TV Bible series are gearing up for another religious historical drama, The Dove Keepers, this time for CBS. TV producer Mark Burnett and his wife actress Roma Downey scored a major hit with their miniseries, The Bible, on the History Channel earlier this year. The Dove Keepers is about 4 women who worked to save 900 Jews under siege by the Roman army at Masada. Downey called the novel an amazing story of heroism and hope. CBS announced it will air a 4-hour miniseries based on it sometime in 2015. And you can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website at cbnnews.com.